warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today's article is Social Identity and Change, and page is 26. The last paragraph. This section examines the ways that people use concepts such as class, gender, ethnicity, and age to create social identities that fix them within particular cultures and societies. Class identities. A social class can be difficult to define, but Crompton suggests that occupation is a good general measure that can allow us to define simple class groupings, such as working, middle, and upper class. Occupation can also suggest ways in which class identities develop out of different work related experiences. So, first of all, we need to understand the terms. What is the topic? The topic is social identity and change. So, the very first thing you need to understand what is social identity. For instance, what is my social identity? So, my first social identity is I'm a male. Then, my social identity, I'm a teacher, right? My social identity, I belong to a middle class. So there are certain parameters, there are certain traits, are the characteristics which can be defined in the light of social identity. I have every single person, every individual have a lot of social identities. So basically, social identity is the kind of thing through which we can understand an individual behavior collectively. In this article, we will discuss something about when we talk about the social identity. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's different parameters through which we can understand this terminology. For instance, class. What is class? Might it is possible, I mean, for instance, if you belong to upper class, you have a different identity. Your living style, your behavior, your attitudes toward other people, it's entirely different. If you belong to middle class, obviously things are entirely different as compared to upper class. And if you're working in a working class, or you can say that in lower class, so things options are entirely different as compared to upper class. So let's begin with the working class. Traditional working class identities are fixed, are centered around manual work and the manufacturing industry. A further dimension to class identity came from the largely urban and close communities within which the traditional working class lived. Here, people of a similar class, occupation, and general social outlook had their culture beliefs continually reinforced through personal experience and socialization. The working class self could be contrasted with the middle upper class other. In such circumstances, class identity was built not just around what people were or believed themselves to be, but also around what they were not. More recently, however, Crompton has suggested changes to the nature of the work. A decline in traditional manufacturing industries, second, a rise of service industries such as banking, computing, and a range of lesser status services jobs. This has led to the emergence of a new working class. Goldthorpe argued that this section of the working class developed new form of identity, privatize our home center, instrumental work as a means to an end, the creation of a comfortable home and family life rather an end in itself. So the very first thing, let's begin. For instance, it's social identity. As I mentioned earlier, social identity is the group of people are the communities. You can say that it has a sort of specific identity. If I want to understand this community, it's easy to understand their role. So when we talk about the role, first of all, we need to identify it's a gender, you can say male or female, the locality, second thing, third, which class. So right now we are talking about the class, and in class we got first of all the working class. So very important thing about the working class is, as I mentioned in my previous lectures as well, working class is a kind of class which is more close to deviance. You know why? Because this class, I mean, they try to remain at their end. They try to serve as the protector of their culture, their traditions. So same is the case in working class. So working class normally represent the class or the force which used to work in industries, in factory, manual work, basically are related to working class. One thing. Second thing about working class, as I mentioned earlier, is the protector, the preserver of their culture and tradition. Most of the working class, I mean, in previous years, one can say that it's related to agriculture or manual work. So majority of the working class has two dimensions: either working in the field or agriculture. Secondly, working in industries. Uh, uh, as a labor. So when we talk about this class, the working class, and their traditions, their culture, their values, and they are protector of their values and culture. So this class it's very difficult sometimes to define. You know why? Because this class is also related to the classes like upper class. For instance, working class members are working class individual while working in industry. I mean, have an interaction with the upper class. The landowner are the industrialist, are the factory owner. So they not only represent their own class, but at the same time, there is a kind of exposure the working class get through upper class as well. And it's a kind of struggle for working class to be more and more and more close to other classes. Secondly, thirdly, one can say that there is a decline between these classes. You know why? Because now all the things are, most of the factories are working through machines, through computer. So a decline in traditional lifestyle, the traditional way of working in factories are even in lands. So that is the factors which can simply reduce our one of the reasons to decline in the working class. One thing. Second thing is entirely opposite. The service industry, computer, and the education sector. So these sectors, these things boost another class rather than working class. So with the passage of time, working class is struggling a bit to maintain its position in the society. So I mean, for instance, if I'm saying that the working class is feeling a bit difficult to maintain its position in the society, but at the same time they can explore new things because they need to survive. They have to be the breadwinner for their family. So now things have been changed for them. So they are towards the couple of new things. And the things are the privatize our home center. The people like to sit and they work from home. Secondly, they are trying their level best with the help of their family members to do something which is more easy, more comfortable for them as well as their family member to earn and survive. In terms of general class identity, however, Divine suggested that there were still important differences between the new working class and the middle classes. The former, for example, retain a strong sense of being working class. Now, the middle class. Middle class identities are constructed around a range of occupational identities. So, whenever we simply say middle class, there are certain things which can really pop up. I mean, which occupations can be attached or can epitomize the middle class. As I mentioned earlier, when we talk about working class, it's all about the manual work, it's all about the labor work, it's all about the force, right? So when we talk about the middle class, same is the case. The professionals such as doctors, whose identity combine high level of educational achievement with the personal autonomy, freedom of action, and decision making. Managers involved in the day-to-day running of private and public companies and identity group suggests that combines career progression, decision making power, and control over others, and the organization of the work routine. Intellectuals, such as university lecturer, who reflect an academic identity dealing with the knowledge and information services. Consultant, focused on selling knowledge, information, and skill across both national and global markets. Routine service workers, such as the shop assistants, who represent an expanding identity group situated at the bottom of the middle class hierarchy. They may have lower earning and level of skill than some higher working class occupation, but they qualify as the middle class on the basis of their non-manual work, and in the case of occupations such as the nursing, higher level of social status. So middle class, very first thing about the middle class, we need to understand which occupations are related or comes in the parameter or the framework of middle class. So there are so many things which can be in middle class. First of all, the doctor. So speaking about doctors, talking about doctors, one can say that they are high achievers. Educational background, struggle a lot. I mean, to achieve to become a doctor or engineer. So first of all, it's professional. Secondly, it's consultant. Consultant, the skill and the information they can share, their services, render their services just to eke out intellectuals. The university lecturers, I mean, they also share their information, share their knowledge, and educate students. Then we got routine service workers, though they are in middle class, but I mean you can say that they are not exactly represent middle class, because they are as compared to doctors, engineers, bankers, consultant, or the lecturers, they are, you can, one can say that the below in the level. So I mean one can say that if a shop has have an assistant, he is considered to be the middle class layer or the tier, but obviously the way he earns is far more different as compared to professional, intellectual, or even consultants. Upper class identities are based on two major groupings. The landed aristocracy is a related small group whose traditional source of power in its historic ownership of land and its political connections to the minority. In the past, this made it the most significant section of society. Over the course of the 20th century, the economic power and influence of the aristocracy may have declined, but there remain a significant upper class section of the society. Secondly, the business elite now represent a major section of the upper class, one characterized by great income, wealth based on the ownership of significant national, international, and global companies. Self and ZLA note that 21% of the UK's total wealth is owned by the wealthiest 1% of its population. 7% of nation wealth is owned by the least wealth 50%. In India, a similar pattern of income equality emerged. The top 10% of the wage earners earn 12 times more than the bottom 10%. 12% of India's 1.2 billion population live on ground 1.25 a day dollar. On a global scale, Davies note that the world's richest 1% own 40% of the total global wealth. It's very amazing. Of this 1%, 60% live in just two countries, the USA and Japan. So when it's the upper class, it's all about, they are two categorized. The business elite and the landowner are the land aristocrats. Land aristocrats, since centuries, they are enjoying a prerogative to be with a minority, and both they gel together hands in hands with each other to get the benefits for the both parties. So but no, with the passage of time, aristocracy is not that powerful, but though I mean it's a historical reality, and still it is practicing in some part of the world. Secondly is business elite. It's very interesting data we can find in this paragraph. It's all about the example which is given in the UK and the India. The very you can say the fractional percentage of the rich people can represent the total wealth. Very, I mean, it's a chunk of total wealth by the country. And the most interesting thing which I find on the global scale, according to Davis, one can say that the world's richest 1%, the world richest 1% owns 40% of the global wealth. It's very interesting. 1% of rich people own 40% of the total global wealth, and out of this 1% of richest person, 60% live in just two countries, the USA and the Japan. So one can say that the America and the Japan, I mean, has a tendency. They are the productive hub for the business, and one can get a lot of benefit. I mean, the things are very appropriate, very you can say auspicious there. I mean, to run a business. So the second thing is we got gender identities. Sometimes I keep on saying, even the terms simply tell us the story. So gender identities simply say gender identity is all about the male or female. So when we talk about male and female, there are certain traits, certain roles which are assigned to either males or with the females. So Connell argued that we are not born a man or a woman, we become man and woman through the social construction of gender identities. In other words, while biological sex refers to the physical characteristics that cause people to be labeled male or female, gender refers to the social characteristics given to each sex. Lips argue the difference in male and female identities do not occur naturally from biological differences. Gender identities differ historically and cross culturally, which means that they are both learned and relative. Connell suggested that there are two forms of dominant gender identities: hegemonic masculinity, where traditional forms of masculinity are based on a variety of physical and mental characteristics. For example, men are encouraged to adopt a particular body shape that ideally emphasize physical strength. Mental characteristics include ideas about man as leader, providing being unemotional, rational, calm, cool, and so on. So according to, so very first thing about the gender identities, biologically we are almost the same. One can say that we all the same. We can't become by birth men and women. It's all about our social construction, with the passage of time, with the interaction, primary socialization, secondary socialization, experience, spending time with different groups, experience, exposure from different place to place. So then we become to realize which part of the world belong, and then on the second place we come to know that if we belong to this part of the world, and this part of world have certain awareness about the certain gender roles, one can say that, I mean, then we become sex based, you can say that, are the gender based characteristics we have. For instance, in Pakistan, for instance, one can say that a male have a certain association. So they used to be the people who work outside the home, and they are the breadwinners. They are the decision maker most of the time. They have the key factor. And obviously, according to Connell, we got two very clear pictures for the gender, are the dominant gender identities. The first is hegemonic masculinity. It is the universal practice. I mean, in most part of the world, most of the societies, they based on patriarchy, because they simply consider, they give preference to males. Males are always given preference over certain jobs. They are the decision makers. Even in the developed country, one can say that if the husband is not able to work outside, still he has the power to decide or make the decision for the family. So this is hegemonic masculinity. Secondly, it's emphasized femininity, relates to the idea that females' identities were traditionally defined by how they could accommodate the interest and need of man. The dominant identity was one that matched and complemented hegemonic masculinity. Women were regarded as essentially passive emotional beings whose identity was expressed in the services of other. Keishan calls this a complicit femininity because it is defined by male needs and desire. So first we got hegemonic masculinity. Second, we have emphasized femininity. So what is emphasized femininities? We need to learn. I mean, there are certain characteristics which are related to women's are the females. So first of all, the characteristics, their soft image, being as a mother, then their instrumental approach towards others. Most of the time, we simply consider mother or female, I mean, to fulfill the desires of their partners, their kids. I mean, the triple shift is also related to females only. They have to work the domestic task. They have to be out just to support their spouse. And thirdly, they are emotionally attached to their family. So basically, when we talk about the emphasized femininity, it's all about the broader sense of a female. And what is the broader sense of female? That they have to take care of their spouse or their family. They need to be more emotionally attached with the family member for the betterment, and just to make family gel together to perform as a working uh, group. Male identities. Although hegemonic masculinity is dominant, alternative masculinity exists. Sauer suggests the following form of masculinity. Subordinate masculinity are generally seen as lesser form of masculinity, particularly for men who are unable or unwillingly to perform hegemonic masculinity, such as those with physical disabilities. So very first thing about the male, so we are talking about the alternatives to the male identities. Though we are living I mean, in most parts of the world we have hegemonic masculinity, but still there are subordinate masculinity. Obviously the persons who are not able to perform the domestic work, are not able to be out as a breadwinner, so obviously they are not that dominant. So those group of people can be fitted in the subordinate masculinity, and most of the people, they simply are physically disabled. Subversive masculinity involve an alternative masculinity that challenges and undermine hegemonic masculinity. An example here might be the serious student who work hard at school rather than being part of a gang that is disruptive in class. So subversive masculinity is a kind of thing which is not ready to accept accept the hegemonic masculinity. And the example we have here are the students who work so hard and who are not ready to accept the masculinity, are the part of a gang that is disruptive in the class. Complicit masculinities refers to newly feminized masculinities such as the new men who combine paid work with their share of unpaid housework and childcare, taking on aspects of the traditional feminine role. So, according to the complicit masculinities, it's all about the new man. We have a concept, in functionalism about the new men that they simply share their role. They can simply change their role according to the situation, and they are the people, or the male people, who can work with their wives, their spouse at home. They can do the things which normally women do in the absence of their husband. So the things are changed with the passage of time. So, and in complicit masculinities, the new men can represent the complicit masculinity. So, marginalized masculinity refers to men who feel they have been pushed to the margins of the family life due to long-term unemployment. For example, they no longer feel able to perform what they see at yes, feel due to the long-term unemployment. For example, they no longer feel able to perform that see as the traditional masculine role of money earner and family provider. Willard and Griffin noted this type of masculinity developing among the long-term unemployed working class as traditional beliefs about the good family men providing for wife and kids clashed with an inability to provide for their partner and children as traditional working class occupation disappeared. So the marginalized, last time we used this term marginalized, it's all about the people who are considered to be not that important. So same is the case with the marginalized masculinity. I mean, they simply, it's a type of female who simply consider themselves, they are not that active, or they are not ready to be the part of the family. They are not part of the family, are the breadwinner due to long-term unemployment. So, for example, they no longer feel able to perform what they see as the traditional masculine role of money earner. So, female identities. And Oakley suggested that female identities were shaped in childhood. Girls and boys are socialized differently into a gendered role that involve gendered identities. This happened in several ways. Girls and boys are treated differently by their parents. So first of all, very first thing, it's the female identities. But we can say that the treatment with the gender is obviously observed in many parts of the world. Males are treated, the boys are treated entirely different as compared to girls. For instance, even in the UK, I mean, they have a, you can say, close watch on their girls, especially the people are the parents who belong to Asia. I mean, they have very close check about their daughters, about their friendship, about their dressing, and they are not allowed to do the same as the local or the native used to do. So, I mean, four main ways in which children are socialized into gender roles. The very first thing, by manipulating, for example, by stressing the importance of appearance for girls and being brave or strong for boys. So, the very first thing, it's all about, I mean, normally we can say the masculinity is all about the brave, unemotional, physically strong, as compared to girls. They are soft, sensitive, very emotional, very touchy. By channelization children's time and attention onto different activities, such as the girl helping her mother cook while the boy plays sports with his father. By verbal appellation, how children are spoken by, for example, telling girl she is pretty, reinforces the idea that attractiveness in females is important. By different activities, what children see their parents and other doing leads to the idea about what is appropriate for each sex. For example, that cooking and cleaning are for women. According to Oakley, there are three main forms of feminine identities in the contemporary society. Contingent feminist are framed and shaped by the male beliefs, behavior, and demand. Normalized identities, for example, involve women learning to play a secondary role to men as mothers, girlfriends, partners, and like. Chambers argue that such identities continually struggling with the problem of producing a femininity that will secure male approval. Sexualized identities are made through male eyes and fantasies. In these type of identities, women are sexual objects that exist for male gratification. So, I mean, things are, according to Oakley, we can say that So very first thing is contingent feminities. In contingent feminities, we got two things: normalized. In normalized, I mean, it's all about the partners, girlfriend, mother. It's a kind of role which is associated with women which are living with men. Second, it's sexualized. In sexualized, obviously, we take women as an object, and it's the whole concept of the sexualized identity is, I mean, we use women as an object. It's all about just to fulfill the sexual male gratification. I mean, so assertive identities reflect the changing position of women in many societies. They involve women breaking free from traditional ideas about femininity, but not completely setting themselves apart from men. Fromm suggested that the power without actually threatening to overthrow such powers. Different type of assertive identity includes girl power identities. Hollow suggests that these emphasize sex as one and importance of female friendship. These identities represent a way of coping with masculinity, but older women are excluded from this identity. So the girl power is all about they like to do whatever they like to for fun. I mean, having friendship with girls as well. Modernized feminities that relate to a slightly older age group. This locate newfound females' economic and cultural power within the context of family relationship. The assertive aspect here is a desire for personal freedom and expression. What Mac Ruby termed individualism, liberty, and the entitlement to sexual self-expression within the context of the traditional gender relationship. So modernized femininity, it's all about the change. It's I mean, obviously with the passage of time, with the awareness, I mean, the secularization, there are so many factors which are evolved. I mean, for the girls, so they are more concerned about their freedom. They are more concerned about their choices, about their career. They are not ready to simply sacrifice their life for family or for their partners. Aging feminities, which assert the right of elderly women to be fashionable, active, and sexual beings. Autonomous feminities, which involve competition with man on female terms. Evans, for example, points to a female individualism as a part of a new gender regime that frees women from traditional constraints such as pregnancy and the child care. Autonomous women are likely to be highly educated. Obviously, if they are highly educated, to simply start their family life very late. So they are starting their family life very late. So they have choice either to give birth or not. So they are the people who simply like to have their career orientation, and they don't like to start the traditional type of life. They don't like to be pregnant or simply give time for childcare. Successful professional of middle class career focus, they also tend to form non-committal heterosexual attachment. These may involve marriage but are unlikely to involve children. As I mentioned earlier, they like to marry, but they are not interested in pregnancy because they don't are not ready to fulfill the responsibility. Ethnic identities. So when we think about the ethnic identities, it is helpful to keep two things in mind. Ethnicity is not the same thing as race. As Osorio argued, the simplest biological notion of race is wrong. There is no solid scientific evidence of the genetically different racial groups. Avoid thinking about ethnicity in the term of minorities. The Center for Social Welfare Research stated for all of us, identity in some sense ethnic, in that we have diverse origins related to how we are perceived and treated by other. So first of all, it's important to understand what is ethnicity. Most of the people are confused and take ethnicity as a race, but originally, according to Osorio, it's not the race, because biologically we don't have some scientific proof to say that we belong to this race and we belong to this race. Avoid thinking about ethnicity in terms of minorities. Most of the people simply consider minorities as an uh, ethnicity. So ethnicity therefore refers to a combination of culture differences in areas such as religion. So in a broader sense, one can say that ethnicity is all about religion, family structure, beliefs, values, norms. Winston suggests that ethnic identities develop when people see themselves as being distinctive in some way from others because of a shared culture background. So see that the very first thing, it's all about the religion. I mean, religion is considered to be cohesive force which simply gel people together for consensus. But at the same time, religion is the same case for making people far apart with each other. We can say that there are so many states in the world which it has very nationalist and very conservative as far as the religion is concerned. So religion play a part in ethnicity as a source of personal and social identity. So country of birth is very important, the sense of common geographic location, tradition, and customs that contribute to unique cultural practices that distinguish one ethnic group from other. Shared histories and experiences as the defining sense of identity, as with the victim of slavery. Religious beliefs, as I told you earlier. I mean, so when we talk about ethnicity, there are so many things. Your country, your place of birth, in your place of birth, in which area you are born, which area you spend most of your time. I mean, your primary socialization, where you conducted, observed your secondary socialization, your working place, your traditional, your culture. I mean, all these things, and especially geographical features, are very important in ethnicity. Unlike racial identities, ethnicity can be negotiated, their nature and meaning can change because of the external and internal factors. External factors might include contact with other cultures, and internal factor might be a clash of ideas and experiences between different ages. So see that, I mean, see, when we talk about the ethnicity, there are so many parameters of ethnicity: religion, place of birth, I mean, the place you live, its geographical features. When we talk about the ethnicity, one can say that it's all about two factors: external factors and internal factors. When we talk about the internal factor, I mean, for instance, you are living with your family for a long time at a a specific area, so still in internal conflict, you can say that, my mother used to do things like that, but I'm not ready to do the same thing like this way. So this is internal differences, internal clashes within the ethnicity. If we talk about the external, so in external, obviously people exchange their views. They simply meet people with different cultural backgrounds. So these we have in ethnicity: external and internal factors which involve in ethnicity. Wimmer argued that an important aspect of ethnic identity is how they are defined in relation to other ethnic groups by contrasting a sense of differences which establishes boundaries for a particular identity. Ethnic boundaries may be positive, conferring a sense of belonging to a definable culture group, and may protect as a way of fighting racism and discrimination. So there's something, I mean, for instance, it's very sometimes difficult to explain. See that a specific group, a specific ethnic group, you can say, for instance, in Africa, they love to protect their culture wherever they move. So the people, for instance, who are living for long in Africa are in Caribbean. So for instance, they move to the USA or the UK. So they love to protect their culture. But at the same time, so if they protect their culture, things will be a bit different, because sometimes even it is possible they are not comfortable to their destination location. So this is a kind of clash of the societies or the civilization. Another way in which ethnic identities can be imposed relates to how minorities identities can be defined by the majority ethnicities. So this is very easy to understand. Obviously sometimes majority ethnicities give meanings to minority ethnicities. Culture, where minorities belief and practices are set up as the challenges to a particular way of life. Physical, where in countries such as Britain and the USA, following the 11th September 2000 World Trade Center attacks, the media framed and references this threat in terms of Muslim and terrorism. So their culture and the physical realities which are associated with ethnicity. And you can, it's a very common practice in Europe or even in the USA. Whenever there is a bomb blast, a terrorist activity, they try their level best to simply attach this activity or event to Muslim world. Our terrorism is all about, you can say that it's Islamophobia. You can simply give give reasons for that. Obviously people who have some sort of relationship or they are Muslim, so they are generally considered to be more attractive towards the terrorist activities. But if the same thing happens by the Christian and other people of other religion, they simply consider they are out of mind. For instance, the psychiatrist, I mean psychological problems. So that is the reason under such pressure the individual act that activity. So this is one of the things which is supposed to be hypocrisy. Age identities, one level, age is simply a matter of how many years someone has been alive, but sociologists are interested in the meanings attached to age. Age is a social construction which means that what it means to be young and old. So age identities, we need to understand, first of all, it's all about when you give I mean, for instance, I mean, once individuals have born somewhere, so it's, you can say, different levels, like toddler, like adult, become young, uh, a father, husband, father, then old person. So there are different levels of the age. And all these ages have a specific influence in the social change, in the social identity. For instance, we need to understand, in traditional African society, there are three main stages in men's life: as children, warrior, and elders. Boy of roughly the same age are initiated into adulthood and become adults at the same time. The initiation may involve instructions in traditions and lore and adult responsibilities. Industrial societies, in contrast, usually place a great emphasis on age in terms of years. Obviously, when we talk about the industrial development, one can say that age is a very key factor. For instance, you go for a job, obviously age play a very important role. If you're above 40, things are entirely different. You are not given preference for physical work. Rather, if you're ready to do some, you can say, assistance, or you can do consultancy. So obviously, the older you are, more expert you are considered to be. Members of an age group who share a common experience of growing up at the same point in history are an age cohort. They grow up and grow older together, experiences the same significant events. This means that whether differences of gender and ethnicity, they may be everyone born in a certain year will belong to the same age cohort throughout their life. They will, for example, be leaving school and later entering retirement around the same age. So, what is age cohort? The group of people who move together from one age to the next age. The older people, in many society, older people are respected and appreciated for guidance based on the experiences. When we talk about the older, there are three to four things we need to understand. Very first thing, there are many parts of the world they are considered to be more respectable because they are considered to be more skillful. So you can say, through their experience of life, most of the family members get benefit from them, one thing. But at the same time, even in certain parts of the world, they are considered to be the burden on the government, because aging population doesn't have anything to do with the physical work. Rather, the government spend a lot of money on them, for their medical care, in pension. There are so many things. But at the same time, in many parts of the world, old people can play a very positive part by their experience. They can play a part in the socialization. They are the one who can simply drop their grandson or daughter to school. They can pick up. Even they share their finance to nurture the kids. They can simply give us very supportive hand to their offsprings. So if we talk about the elders, there are different ranges, like 65 to 74, 75 to 84, the old elderly, 85 and over, the very elderly. So this is what actually we have the subdivision in the UK. So just take a break, just to listen prayer, and I will be back within a minute or so. So inshallah ta'ala, we will continue with the children in my next lecture. So it's time to say goodbye, and hope to see you tomorrow again. Fi amanullah.